Hey adventurers, today is going to be a review for the Wingfeather Saga by Andrew Peterson. This series is a 4-book series and it consists of Book 1, On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness, Book 2, North or Be Eaten, Book 3, A Monster in the Hollows, and Book 4, The Warden and the Wolf King. This is a high fantasy / fantasy, and the age range is middle grade. So because this is a series review rather than a specific book review, I'm not going to go into quite so much detail per character. It's going to be pretty broad and overarching and mostly kind of my overall thoughts looking back at the series as a whole. I will still be following our 5 elements of story outline thingy that we use for everything, and so it should be very familiar format if you've watched any of our other reviews, and it will be spoiler free. So starting with characters. The 3 main characters of the series are Janner, Tink, and Lily. There's plenty of other important characters, but these are really what this story is focused on. Each of these characters, Janner, Tink, and Lily, all have specific skill sets and things that are important to their character arcs as they go along. Janner has a very good character arc throughout the story with lots of personal and relatable struggles. So he goes through a lot and he has to deal with a lot. And they're things that are relatable to an average everyday person. Not everybody will relate to him, obviously, and some will relate to Tink or Lily more than Janner. But I personally found Janner to be the more relatable of the 3. Tink is very similar though, with lots of relatable struggles. So ultimately I liked his character less because of one specific decision that he made at the end of his character arc. I'm not going to say what that is because of spoilers, but it had to do with a trope that I don't like, and so I am not impressed with that one decision, and so that one decision made him less likable to me as a character throughout the whole series. Before that point, I would have probably put him above Janner in my personal ranking of characters, I guess. Lily is probably, of these 3, the character with the most, or with the least development and least time spent on her character arcs. It's still interesting and there's some really cool things about her, specifically surrounding her skill set that she has. That's what makes her relatable to me personally, is the abilities and skills that she has, which I'm keeping it vague because of spoilers. The rest of the characters were well written, and they all had very distinct voices and quirks and personalities. This includes the villains as well. From what I remember, everybody's motivations, villains and heroes alike, or antagonists and protagonists alike, were believable. They made sense with the character arcs and with the things happening in the world and the decisions that who each character was. Kind of the basic plot and premise of this series is that the Igabys are forced to leave their home in order to survive, with the fangs of Dang looking for them and the constant threat of Nag the Nameless always looming. The Igabys are thrust into an adventure to save their lives and maybe even the world. It's kind of a classic hero's journey type series with a lot of other story tropes played on throughout the series, some good, some that I do like, some that I don't like. Should word it that way. The premise is pretty basic, but it's well executed for the most part. The themes are one of the places where this series really shone. There was a lot of very, very strong themes, and Andrew Peterson is a Christian, and so a lot of his beliefs are reflected in his writing. The themes that and there's a lot more of them, but the themes that just popped out to me and I was able to write down as I was seeing them and thinking about them and thinking back to the series just when I was writing this video was self-sacrifice, family, protect those weaker than yourselves, decisions have consequences. One person can affect change, but then added to that is when an entire group rises up against those that abuse their power, they are forced to be reckoned with. Hope is contagious. With hope comes courage. And then the power of art and the different types of things that can be done using art, messages portrayed and things like that through art. So lots of really good themes, lots of very powerful themes, and the exploration of them was really well done. For the world/setting, it's a high fantasy world, so it's set on a completely other world, not Earth. This world is called Erudite, and it's a world full of magic, much the same way as Middle Earth, where there isn't specifically a defined magic system, but it's rather the Earth itself is imbued with the magic. The various places you visit, from Glipwood to Scree and across the Dark Sea of Darkness to Dang, the Green Hollows, and the Shining Isle, and all the various locations throughout the series that you are visiting and that you get to see, they're all very well developed. They are full of life, full of whimsy, but they're populated and they're lived in. It feels like there's a history there. It feels like there's a people there who have lived there for a long time, and it doesn't just feel like a new author who doesn't know what he's doing. It feels like he really tried to get into the details about how these places work and that type of thing. There's great world building with obviously a large amount of history. So throughout the world that you see, there's clearly history that has happened, whether you're learning it or whether it's just alluded to, or whether it's, you know, based on everything going on around you, that there is some history that we don't necessarily need for the specific story, but is there. For the uniqueness factor, the magic system is never really fully explained. It's not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be a hard magic system. There are some rules to it, yes, like any magic system, but it's not a hard magic system in that you can define all the different rules of this magic system and how it works. There is a lot to it, and a lot that I found really interesting and very unique way. I don't think I've ever seen a magic system done quite like this one, which is a good thing to say about a magic system. It's not super unbelievable, like with the way the world is set up and built. It is believable how they created this magic system, so that's good. It is well developed. Overall, my general thoughts are pretty positive. It's not a perfect series, but it's really solid with a wonderful exploration of themes and characters. This series is obviously Christian based. There's a lot of Christian influences on this series that are quite obvious if you're looking for them, but it's also not blatant. But then the other thing that I thought was really interesting was how Peterson used arts for world building and for character development. Oftentimes you don't see art as being important to a fantasy story. There are times that you do. The Stormlight Archive is one of the times that art is very important to how the magic system is portrayed and things like that, or the character arcs. But this is very different in that it's just these characters have been trained in the arts, and that's been very beneficial to them, though they don't know why. It's just very interesting to see, and it's very refreshing to see, because what I've noticed about myself is I'm primarily an artist. Whether it's in terms of writing or storytelling or music or whatever it is, I may not be the best at it, but that's such an integral part of my life that I couldn't imagine my life without it, and I couldn't imagine what type of person I would be if these skills weren't part of me. And so seeing that within the characters and within the series is very cool to see. My biggest issue with this series is some of the tropes that Peterson would dabble in. I'm not gonna say which ones, but if you know me very well, and I think you could probably find out which tropes these are just based on some of the other videos that we've made, but they are not my favorite tropes, and I rarely am okay with people using them because they're rarely done well. I don't think they were done horribly in this series, but I also don't think they're done particularly well either. They were just kind of there, and while not horrible, they also made me not enjoy it as much as I could have. And I know I've mentioned a lot of good things like the themes and the characters and stuff like that, but the writing style was very unique. Peterson has a very unique voice that he writes in. Part of that is because Andrew Peterson is a musician, and that obviously translates into his writing style. There were multiple times before I realized that Peterson was a musician when I was first reading On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness, that I was like, wow, this, he has a very lyrical writing style, or a very musical writing style. It flows naturally, it's smooth, and there's like a sense of rhythm and meter to it almost, without like almost a little bit of rhyme and alliteration at times, but it's not poetry, but it flows like poetry would, or like music would, and that's very cool to me, and I really enjoyed seeing that from him. It made listening to the audiobooks very, very enjoyable, because the first two I listened to were narrated by a different person, and then the second two were narrated by Andrew Peterson himself. And while I preferred the voice of the first person, and he captured the flow of some of the writing really well, I thought Andrew Peterson did actually really good job narrating as well. And there is some actual poetry in the books that's pretty well done. I wish there was more, and I wish we could see some... I would kind of wish we could have heard the music that was actually being played and sung and stuff like that. I kind of wish that we could have heard that, or that there would have been tunes to it, because that's one of my favorite things. The Redwall audiobooks, all the songs are sung, and their music, the melody is written for them, and it's absolutely amazing. And so I kind of wish some of that would have been shown in the books, or in his audiobooks. I understand why they weren't, but I'd like to hear the songs from this series. There's not a ton of them, not nearly as much as Redwall or Lord of the Rings, but there's some, and I would have enjoyed hearing that. I think my overall rating for this series is probably like around a 4.5. It's a really well done series. The last thing I am going to do for this series review is I'm going to rank the books by my personal ranking, and I don't know entirely for sure, because book 4 bounced around quite a bit. There were places where I was like, yeah, book 4 is going to be my #1 favorite, and there was places where like book 4 is number 3 or 4 at best. So I think overall I like where I have it currently, but I'm not sure. So my current ranking of the books is book 2, North or Be Eaten, book 4, The Warden and the Wolf King, book 1, On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness, book 3, A Monster in the Hollows, or The Monster in the Hollows. That one played the most with tropes that I dislike, and that really brought it down for me, which is why The Monster in the Hollows is so low on my ranking. It wasn't horrible, but it was definitely not nearly as enjoyable as book 2. Book 1 was just full of whimsy and full of fun, lightheartedness, but with that shadow of the darkness of the rest of the series that you would run into, and that I thought was really well done and really interesting. So that is my review for the Wingfeather Saga by Andrew Peterson. I hope you enjoyed this. If you haven't read this series, I would recommend it. Or at least recommend the first one to see if you enjoy it. I didn't absolutely love the first one. It wasn't my favorite book by any means, but there were some things about it that just made me want to read the second one. And I'm glad I did, because the second one was really, really good. I really enjoyed the second one. That one, I don't think there was anything in the second one that I strongly disliked, that was like, this isn't, whether it's tropes or character arcs or anything, there was pretty much everything in that one. It's like, okay, this works, and it worked well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite adventure. We will see you guys again soon. Stay warm.